Hello everybody, welcome back. This is Sierra and on my channel today I'm going to be filming my second and final part of my Mount Fuji adventure series. So I'm going to play the intro for you guys and I'll be back with you in just a second. Hey guys, since you guys saw the intro and you read the description, you guys already know what I'm going to be talking about in my video today. In my video today, I'm going to be talking about my experience with Mount Fuji and I'm going to be sharing my 5 top travel tips for Mount Fuji with you guys. But before I get into that, I know some of you guys are here for maybe the first time, and so if you guys are new here, I just want to let you guys know that hi, I'm Sierra. I'm an American living in Japan. Every week I make a new video about my crazy life in Japan, lush, being vegan, and zero waste, and today's video topic, of course, falls into my crazy life in Japan part of my channel. So without further ado, let's just move on and talk about what I want to talk about today, yeah? Cool. Side note, if you guys hear weird crackling sound, it's because there's about 8.5 million cicadas outside singing their songs for the middle of the day, so if there's weird background noise, that's what it is. So today is August 14th, and on August 10th I did something crazy. I climbed Mount Fuji. If you guys haven't seen that video yet, I'm going to make sure that it's linked up in the card so that you guys can check that out first. Anyways, I made a little list of the top 5 tips of things from my own experience that I think would really help people who are interested in climbing Mount Fuji, or in general, people who are interested in climbing mountains in general, so I wrote them all down in my little bullet notebook. Before I start, I do want to put out the disclaimer that this was my first time climbing Mount Fuji and that I am not like a professional climber or a professional hiker or anything like that. Hiking is just something that I've been interested in for the past couple of years, and when I get time on the weekends and it's not too hot, I like to go hiking, and sometimes, as you guys know from my channel, I do other stuff too. So I'm not sponsored by any of the brands I'm talking about in my video, and I wanted you guys to know that just so that you guys know that this is my full and honest opinion about everything Mount Fuji related and gear that I'm talking about related. The first and most important thing that is essential for climbing Mount Fuji is making sure that you have the right equipment. As I've already said, I am not a professional and I am not affiliated with any of these brands. I'm just going to tell you guys what our guide recommended for us to bring and what I decided to bring in my pack so that I was prepared for Mount Fuji. For those of you guys who don't know a lot about Mount Fuji, you should know that Mount Fuji is an active volcano, so it's possible that it could erupt like anytime. It's not likely going to erupt, but if it does, it's good at least for someone to know where you are so that they know like what happened. If there's an eruption, they could figure out maybe where to find you. But anyways, equipment. Yeah. So within preparing the right equipment, it is really essential to think about the weather conditions. As I already mentioned, Mount Fuji is an active volcano, but it is also a very tall mountain. So what that means is the temperature on the ground level where you start climbing is not going to be the same as the air temperature on the top of the mountain where you're going to finish climbing, and as you're climbing up and down, the weather could change pretty much at any moment because you're up in the clouds for most of your climb. First important item that you're going to need for climbing Mount Fuji is a pair of hiking boots. Now, I understand a lot of people who are hiking these days don't like to wear hiking boots because they're heavy, they're often made of leather, and they're just sometimes not as comfortable as like your trail runners. I totally understand. When I go hiking, I prefer to wear trail runners as well. However, when I'm climbing something like Mount Fuji, which is an active volcano where there is no joke, like tons and tons of volcanic rock, you're going to want something that's sturdy and something that supports your ankles because, as you guys saw in my last video, if you watched it, there are so many rocks you could easily trip and twist your foot on. You do not want to twist your foot halfway up. It's going to cost like $300 or so for someone to come and rescue you. If you don't already own a pair of hiking boots, that's totally fine. We rented a lot of our equipment actually through the rec center on our base. I've heard that there are some locations near Mount Fuji where they will rent equipment for the day, and a lot of times if you book a tour, they include all of your equipment. So if you don't already own hiking boots, I recommend borrowing them from someone or renting them, and here's why. As with all shoes, hiking boots, of course, are really even more rigid when you first purchase them, and that means that they're not broken in yet. So rented hiking boots or borrowed hiking boots or hiking boots you've used for a long time are better because they're already broken in and you don't have to worry about breaking them in on a mountain. Alright, second item I would highly suggest, actually most climbing companies, if you climb with a company, are going to require that you bring rain gear. The rain gear that I brought, I actually rented a pair of rain trousers from the rec center because I don't actually really wear them when I'm hiking the rest of the time. The last time I was in the States, I decided to finally invest in a good rain jacket, and they were having a sale at REI, so I brought this rain jacket from REI. It's just like their classic collection rain jacket, but I really liked it because it's black, which means if it's raining and it's cold, black is going to be a little bit warmer, or at least that's what they say. And I also made sure that I brought this one because it had pit zips in it, As you guys probably already know, when you're hiking and it's raining, water is the enemy, and after it stops raining, you can get cold and then you can die of exposure, which is not good. In addition to rain gear, as I already said, the weather can change really quickly and get really cold on Mount Fuji. I think the day that we climbed, it was about 41 Celsius at the summit. So it's a really good idea to bring some kind of warm like sweater or like puffy jacket. I don't own what's called a puffy, so I don't hike when it's that cold, so I just brought my Patagonia Better sweater. Again, I'm not sponsored by Patagonia, but I picked out this one quite a while ago for hiking because I liked that it had a pocket on the arm sleeve for my phone. Or things I'd recommend in addition to your rain gear, because on Mount Fuji it goes from raining to sometimes really sunny, so I highly suggest bringing sunscreen with you. Even if you don't think you're going to need sunscreen on the mountain, put it on the tip of your nose, put it on your shoulders if you're wearing a tank top, because believe it or not, you'll probably get sunburn. In addition to that, I would highly recommend, at least our guide recommended, bringing some type of a hat to wear as you are climbing to protect your neck and your face. I did not take this advice. I did not bring a hat with me just because, one, I don't own a hat and I hate wearing hats because my head gets too hot. But, you know, take that with a grain of salt. But one of the items I definitely recommend if you're not going to bring a hat, or even if you are going to bring a hat, is to bring some type of sunglasses. And that's because you'll need them on the way down. On the way down, there's a lot of gravel and it's really sandy as well. And dust is going to fly into your face and it's going to get into your eyes. And if you don't have something to protect your eyes, you're going to be climbing like this all the way down. And nobody wants that because you could fall and hurt yourself. All right, let's see. Another thing I would highly, highly recommend, I can't find it, it's here, is bringing some type of a moleskin tape or like a medical tape that's a little bit water resistant. The one that I brought on the mountain with me is this kind. I don't actually know what it was called. I think it's called Luco tape, and it has some buzz on it from being in my pack. This is actually recommended to me by Darwin on the trail, and he knows what he's talking about, dare I say, 100% of the time. Well, I mean, the man's hiked like all the trails, so I feel like he'd know what he's talking about. When I first started ascending, I realized that the backs of my boots were like digging into my heels a little bit. Well, not digging, they were like rubbing on my heels, and I stopped and I took my tape out and I put tape kind of along like the back of my heel on my foot, and I didn't have any problems after that. So if you are hiking and you feel any rubbing at all, just stop for a second, quickly put on some tape, and you'll be good to go, or at least for a little while. All right, other items I highly, highly, highly suggest, and actually I think everyone in the mountain has one, is some type of hiking stick. So this is our Mount Fuji hiking stick that Mr. carried his way up Mount Fuji. I decided not to get a hiking stick because I've never used them before and I wasn't really sure like how I would navigate having just one. And so instead of a hiking stick, I would highly recommend a pair of trekking poles to help you as you're climbing the mountain. I bought these the last time when we were in the States, when we were in Utah. If you guys were following my Utah video, you guys probably have seen me using these in that hiking video when we hiked Twin Peaks. This is their second voyage, and I will say these trekking poles did really well. Mine are the Black Diamond Robin Egg Blue women's trekking poles. I don't really know how much the women's versus men's trekking poles are. Maybe the handles are different. I don't know. If you do know what I'm talking about, like put it down in the comments. But I just store mine like in the original packaging because I want them to stay together. When I was in the States, I did decide to purchase the tips for them, but when I was hiking, I took the tips off, and as you can see, they're a hot mess and scratched up now, which just means they've been used. You're going to really want these to help you kind of dig into little like pieces of the rocks, and I found that it kind of just helps you when you're sliding to like dig in, especially on your way down, because it's a lot steeper than it looks, and you're going to want it, trust me. Other things I highly recommend that you bring for Mount Fuji is a little first aid kit of some kind, including some wet wipes or a towel. And the reason you want to do this is because before you're eating, if you don't want to eat dirty, nasty, brown climbing hands, you can wipe with the baby wipes and or your towel moistened with a bit of your water. Or if you hurt yourself, you'll have something to clean your wounds with. There is a couple of first aid stations as you're climbing the mountain, but if you stop and you scratch yourself on a rock, tetanus is a thing. So it's not going to hurt you to wipe it, at least to kind of like get some of the dirt out and keep some bacteria, at least until you can get someone to help you. Another thing I wanted to speak on is making sure that you're bringing enough yen. As you're climbing the mountain, there's no way for them to run credit cards because Let's be honest, power is extremely limited when you're climbing a mountain. Our guide recommended bringing at least $200 per person. Mr. and I knew that we weren't going to buy a lot of food on the mountain, so we only brought 300 American dollars in yen as we were hiking, which probably wasn't the best idea, but we were fine. Our guide did recommend bringing a ton of change, which after hiking the mountain, I see why that was recommended. However, a lot of places will be able to make change for you, so if you have bigger notes, it shouldn't be a problem. Worst case scenario, you can either just skip your stamps if you have to, or ask someone in your party if you can borrow some coins. Or if you have more than one person who's burning a stick in your party, you guys can kind of go in together, and then the guy who's burning the sticks might be able to give you change for like some of it. You know what I mean? Kind of. Yeah, anyway. Other item, this goes without saying, but people forget, is to make sure that you bring enough snacks with you for your descent and also your ascent on the trail. Now, as you guys saw in my video, there are places to buy food on the mountain, but it's either really expensive and really good, or really expensive and not that good. And you never know what it's going to be until you get there. A friend of mine got a bowl of ramen on the summit, and she was highly disappointed, and she said it was crazy expensive. So yeah, especially if you're vegan like me, or if you have any food allergies or dietary restrictions, it's better to just bring your food, and that way you know that you'll be okay. You know what I mean? All right. And the last and final thing that I highly recommend is, actually it's a set, a face mask and a pair of gaiters. Gaiters are like those like foot covers that people wear that a lot of hikers say that you don't need when you're hiking, like other places, but on Mount Fuji, you need them. And the reason you need them is because on the way down, the little sharp gravel rocks will get into your boots, and it's going to be really uncomfortable because you're walking on rocks, and nobody wants to do that. So bring those, and then also on your way down, I did not wear my mask on the way down, but I wish I did. As I was going down, I knew that there was a lot of dust hitting my face, and my glasses were keeping it out, but then later on the way home on the bus, I started coughing and having kind of like a hard time, like, I don't know, it almost felt like I was getting a cold. Guess what it was? Mountain dirt. So that's the end of my list of things that I would definitely make sure to bring as I was hiking Mount Fuji. I did receive a little like to bring list as I was hiking Mount Fuji. I'm just going to go through it really quickly, the things that I think I did bring and or were recommended. Yeah, I'll just read the rest of it. So in addition to the things I already said, it is recommended that you bring utility gloves for your climb. I didn't need them, but also it didn't rain and it didn't get really cold, and I didn't end up needing to like climb with my hands on the way up, but you might want them. Of course, lots of water, an oxygen can, that can be really important. You might get altitude sickness. I'll talk about that in tip number 2. Thick socks, warm jacket, long sleeve shirt, let's see, snack, towel, plastic bags for trash and to keep things dry, a watch, and a cell phone. So if you're hiking with a guide like we are, eventually your guide will leave you if you're not done hiking when you need to be done hiking. So if you don't know what time it is, you're not going to know what time it is unless you ask at the mountain hut. So just bring your phone or a watch. Okay, tip number 2, that is something that's really important that I want to talk about, is something called altitude sickness. So as you guys saw in my video, if you watched it, as I was climbing Mount Fuji, I did life on an airbase. That was definitely a helicopter going over my building. Y'all done? As I was saying, if you guys watched my video, I did suffer from a little bit of altitude sickness as I was climbing Mount Fuji. Altitude sickness is, of course, obviously caused by high altitudes, and the main cause of that high altitude sickness is there's just not enough oxygen in your body. So as it says in my little Fuji guide they gave us when we signed up for the hiking tour, on Mount Fuji, anyone can be susceptible to the effects of high altitude sickness. Common symptoms include headache, shortness of breath, dizziness, irritability, decreased concentration, and lack of energy. Something that's not mentioned in here is nausea, which I did experience a little bit of shortness of breath and nausea as I was first ascending the mountain. And a lot of people don't know what altitude sickness is, and they don't prepare for it. I have to stress to you guys, as you are hiking Mount Fuji, or really anywhere high and high mountains, if you are feeling dizzy, short of breath, or feeling any nausea or any of the other symptoms that are mentioned, it is important to stop and rest. Every single year, people die on Mount Fuji. I'm not kidding. They die because they are ascending too fast, they're descending too fast, or they're not listening to their bodies. So I know that climbing Mount Fuji and reaching the summit is really, really important to some people, but at the end of the day, you have to think, is it more important to summit the mountain or stay alive? Make a choice. Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to mention about altitude sickness. Before you go hiking on Mount Fuji, and I actually should have mentioned this in my packing list, but I didn't, make sure that you bring a can of oxygen with you. It's really light. We got ours, I think it was for like 600 yen in Tokyo, but if you go to buy it at this 5th station before you start hiking, it's like 2,000 yen, so don't forget it. And if you're feeling symptoms of altitude sickness, you can spray some oxygen into a little like masky thing, and that can help you feel better. Tip number 3 that actually a friend of ours on the hiking trip told us that I didn't even think about was that you should not take off your boots. I know that there is debate about this as you're climbing because a lot of times hikers have to take off their boots to allow their feet to rest. However, at high altitudes, it's possible that your feet can swell, which means you won't be able to get them back inside your boots. If that happens and your feet won't go back in your boots on the top of a mountain, what do? There's nothing you can do except either squeeze them in or walk down without your boots on. All right, tip number 4, as you're descending the mountain, the path kind of goes like this, back and forth. And you'll notice if you turn on your way down and look up that in between the little zigzags, there are kind of like little like terrace thingies that are full of really heavy looking boulders. And there's this thing called gravity. And if gravity is not in your favor, it can pull one of those boulders down and it can hit you in the head and crush you. And then my last and final tip, number 5, is to highly, highly consider doing a day hike rather than a 2-day hike. What I mean by that is a lot of tour companies and guides suggest doing a 2-day hike where you either start ascending the mountain pretty late in the evening, sleeping in a hut, and then finish ascending in the next morning at the top so you can see the sunrise, and then you go back down. When I first thought about climbing Mount Fuji, that's what I thought I wanted to do, but the tour that we wanted to go on was free and it was a day hike. Now looking back on it, I don't think I would ever even consider now, after doing Mount Fuji, doing an overnight hike on a mountain. And the reason for that is because when I was going down the mountain, my feet really hurt and I was tired. However, the next morning, I was in so much pain, and I cannot imagine being in that much pain and then having to go down a mountain. So anyways, that concludes my top 5 tips for climbing Mount Fuji. I know there's a lot of tips underneath the tips, but that's the best I can do. Anyways, if you guys have any questions about climbing Mount Fuji, or if you guys have any suggestions for me for future climbs, please let me know. Other than that, I will let you guys go. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys for watching. Bye!